Everyone, welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. As promised, we have a new kerchief tutorial for you. Talked about one of these the other day on the live stream. I love them. I can't get enough of them. I've been wearing them like crazy, and I'm sort of on a quest to find cuter and quicker stitch patterns to build into a headscarf. And I think I may have done that today. So this concept of a headscarf is built on a corner to corner stitch, much like our Summer Breeze pattern was. We did a live crochet along using that pattern a little while ago, and I love how that one turned out. This one is even faster than that. There's a lot less crocheting, there's a lot more chaining and slip stitching. It kind of is a bit like a mesh stitch, and I feel like it creates a really nice, close-fitting kerchief. And there's an added bonus to this one. There's a place to put a trinket. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the tutorial. I actually went ahead and made a second one. I love it. I really do. And this is that pretty little ripple wildflower colored Caron cake I was using during the live crochet along. I can't get enough of this color combination, but that is a nice little close-up of what the actual pattern looks like. It is breezy, it is cool, it is quick, and it's kind of a fun way to experiment with different natural fiber yarns. We did a fun little poll earlier this week. We asked everybody what natural fiber yarns you may have had some experience with, which ones you like the best. So we're talking your cotton, bamboo, wool, silk, linen, those ones. And most of you had some sort of experience with cotton and perhaps a little bit with other ones. Well, this is cotton and this is a cotton bamboo blend. And I'd say both of these make fantastic headscarves. So without further ado, let's grab our hooks, grab some cool, natural size 3 or 4 weight yarn. We'll head on over to the craft table and we will stitch up a kerchief together. For today's kerchief, you're going to want to use a size 3 or a size 4 weight yarn, about 150 yards just to be on the safe side. Now I'm using a size 3. I'm also using a bamboo cotton blend, but you can use cotton acrylic, nylon wool, pretty much any kind of yarn fiber that you feel is comfortable against your skin and is nice and smooth to work with and won't be bothersome in your hair. So this is really up to you, but I highly recommend sort of natural fibers or natural fiber blends because they feel nice and they're airy on your head. I'm using a 5mm hook. This is also known as an H or an 8. And you can use the same size hook whether you're using the 3 weight yarn or the 4 weight yarn. You want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and a measuring tape is often handy when you're making something to wear. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. If you can't decide on a yarn, then here are a couple of recommendations. This is a size 3 100% cotton yarn. It's self-striping, there's a little ripple to it. It's a Caron ripple cake. I've used this for a couple other kerchiefs so far this summer and I love it. And it really feels nice and it makes the little corner to corner pebble pattern kind of on the small side, but a little bit bumpy and ripply. So there's a real sort of sweet effect to that. This is a 24/7 cotton yarn by Lion Brand, 100% cotton, mercerized, so it's got a little bit of a sheen. It's a bit bigger of a yarn weight. This is all made using the same hook, and it just highlights that pretty little pebble stitch a little bit more, so you get a little bit more of that mesh effect happening. And it also feels really nice. So if you can't decide which yarn to try, then work the first few rows of the pattern. Give yourself an idea of the gauge and the feel of it, and that might help propel you in the direction of a particular yarn. This is a corner to corner pattern, so we are going to begin at the very bottom point and work our way outwards. You can keep repeating this little pebble pattern until you have a final sort of long side that is comfortable enough to fit your purposes. But remember, we are adding ties, so you don't have to make it super long to wrap all the way around your head, because that's what the ties are for. Here we go. We are going to start with a slip knot on our hook. We're going to chain 4. Every little pebble motif starts with a chain 4, and then we half double crochet back into the first chain. And the 3 of those 4 chains counts as a half double crochet chain 1. So one entire little corner to corner motif is that. Chain 4, half double crochet into the first chain. Now that's what starts every single row. That is row 1 complete. Let's start row 2. We chain 4. Look for that first chain and half double crochet into it. Then you want to hold on to that little pebble. Your other little pebble from row 1 is going to be facing down. So you see your little chains are kind of that little bump effect. It's facing down. You want to flip it up. So it's going to feel a little funny, but don't worry. You want that little chained rounded bubble effect to be facing up. You're going to slip stitch right into the space, and then you're going to create a regular motif. These are the ones that are going to fill the majority of your rows, and they're not too different from the beginning of every row, but they look like this. Chain 3, and the chain 3 counts as a half double crochet, chain 1, and then into that nice easy to see space you're going to half double crochet. And that is the whole little pebble motif. So now we've got 2 little pebble motifs in row 2. There's row 1. It's going to look a little awkward. Don't worry, that evens itself out. Every row will have the same number of pebbles in it as the row number. So row 1, pebble. Row 2, 2 pebbles or motifs, however you want to call them. Let's start row 3. We chain 4 to begin the row. Find that first chain, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 if you have to count backwards. Half double crochet into it. And you're going to make sure you take your work. Here's a little point, it's easy to see. Make sure your little bumps are facing upright. So now you know you've got 2 little pebbles from row 2. Make sure they're on the top. You're going to find the first little motif. You're just looking for those sweet little spaces that are made. Slip your hook right into it and slip stitch. And then we chain 3. The chain 3 counts as a half double crochet, chain 1. And into the same easy to see space, you're going to half double crochet. We're not done yet because there were 2 little motifs in row 2. Find the next one, slip your hook right through the middle of it, slip stitch, chain 3, and half double crochet into the same space. Alright, that is 3 little rows done now. You've got 3 little pebbles because it was row 3. You know your work is facing upright because your bottom point is down here. There's your little beginning tail. This is the bottom point of your kerchief. We are working back and forth, corner to corner, working across the long side. You always know your work is up because that little bump in the motif is facing up. And of course you can clearly see the 3 little pebbles from the previous row. That was row 3. Let's do another row together. Every row begins with a chain 4. 3 of those chains counts as the half double crochet, chain 1. We want to half double crochet back into the first chain. It's like the little anchor. And you can grab both or only one loop from that first chain. Grab your work, make sure before you start the row that you flipped it so all your soft little bumps are facing upright and your little pointed tail is down. And then you find the first easy to find space. If you have to, just go through. There's all my little pebbles. I'm looking for the spaces. Slip my hook through the first one, slip stitch, chain 3, and half double crochet into the space. Here's the next little pebble, slip stitch, chain 3, and half double crochet into the space. Here's the last little pebble, slip stitch right into the space, chain 3, and half double crochet. That's row 4 complete. There are 4 little motifs, or 4 little pebbles. You can see all of my little soft bumps are pointing upright. And if you haven't yet decided on a yarn to use, that is about where I would work to decide if you like the feel of it, if you like the size of the little mesh stitch that's happening, and if you think it's going to be nice to work with, or at least feel against your skin, because this is a wearable. But you can just keep going and going and going now if you like where you're at, and that's what I'm going to do. So chain 4 to begin every row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half double crochet into that first chain. Always turn your work to make sure your little bumps are facing upright. You're going to slip stitch into the first pebble space, chain 3, and half double crochet. And then you repeat the same thing for every single pebble all the way across. Every row will grow by 1 little motif or 1 little pebble. Slip stitch, chain 3, half double crochet into each space, which is the middle of every single little motif all the way across. Here's the next one. Slip stitch, chain 3, half double crochet, and then there's the last one for this row. Slip stitch, oops, slip stitch, chain 3, and half double crochet. We are only ever increasing, so there's no decreasing to worry about. There's no working straight to worry about. You're just increasing every single row. So row 5 has 5 little motifs in it, and so on. I'm going to work a few more rows, and I'll catch up with you again in a bit. As I previously mentioned, this is a kerchief, so this is the only measurement that you're really concerned about, whether you're making it for a child or an adult or an extra large head. But remember, we're putting on ties, so this little part can actually be as long or short as you need it to be or want it to be aesthetically, because we are adding ties, and that's what's going to help keep it on your head. So if you want it to be a little sort of deeper to dip down the back of your head, you might want to add a few more rows. But remember, this is a mesh stitch. It's very stretchy, so don't worry too much about it. This is the measurement here that we're going for, so you're always going to kind of be paying attention to this top long row of the triangle as you work. You're aiming for about 13.5 inches or around 33, maybe 44 centimeters for a child for this length. For an adult, it's going to be around 40 centimeters or 15, almost going to 16 inches. And if you need an extra large one, 42.5 centimeters, maybe 17 inches across. That translates to roughly 22 rows for a child, 26 rows for an adult, or 28 rows or more for a larger or custom kerchief. And that's really all you've got to do. So I'm already 8 rows in here, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to hit row 26, and I'll catch up with you then. I'm at the end of row 26. I have 26 little pebbles running across the top of my kerchief. I have roughly 40 centimeters across, or 15.5, almost 16 inches without stretching. So do not stretch. This is a very stretchy fabric. Mesh stitches always are. Do not stretch it when you measure. So row 26 is roughly 15, almost 16 inches, 40 centimeters for me, and that's it. I'm an average human head. And I'm going to add my ties now. If you wanted it bigger, you can just keep adding rows. If you feel that is too wide, you can remove some rows. You do not have to worry about having an even or an odd number of rows. The border is going to work on this pattern no matter how many rows you put in. So it doesn't matter. You just make it until it's as wide across as you like. The first thing we're going to do is add some ties. If you are making this for a child, I recommend chaining 41. If you are making this for an adult, I recommend chaining 51. You can also make them longer or shorter if you want, depending on the hook, your tension, the yarn you've chosen. Just remember to write down the number of chains you use because you want to do the exact same thing on the other side. Once you've chained the correct number, 41 for children, 51 for adults, or a custom number, you're going to skip the first chain from the hook, find the second one, slip stitch into it. Nice and easy. Do not slip stitch too tightly. Try not to be too loose. Just nice and easy. If your hook slips out like mine does, just take a breath, put it back in, try again. You're going to slip stitch into each chain all the way back to the kerchief. And try to keep your tension easy going. You don't want to be too tight or too loose. But remember, you can always take that sort of piece of fabric you've created and tug on it gently, and that will help smooth everything out. So try not to worry too much about your tension, but just take your time. Once you've slip stitched into each chain all the way back, you might have the odd little loose chain. Just yank on it and it'll help sort of even itself out over time. Plus remember, these are ties, they're going to be hidden under the back of your head and under your hair. So don't worry about it too much. I'm just going to work the last slip stitch into my last chain. That brings me back to the edge of my kerchief. Now I want to make sure that my point, the bottom of my kerchief, is down here. I'm going to be working down this edge of the kerchief. So into the end of that first motif, or I should say the last motif of the last row, right into that space, I'm going to slip stitch. You are looking for the motifs at the edge of each row all the way down. We're going to chain one, and here we go. Right into that space, you're going to single crochet twice. This is why it doesn't matter how many rows you end up making your kerchief. This little edging is not stitch or row count specific. You're just going to work 2 single crochet into each last motif of the row. So you're looking for the motif at the end of a row. You are single crocheting into it twice, and then you're moving on to the next one, looking for the actual motif. If you get confused, just sort of stop, make sure that you've got the motif and not just an accidental little space in between stitches. If you did 26 rows like I did, you'll have 52 single crochet down your first edge when you get to the point. If you did 19 or 20 rows, you'll have 38 or 40 single crochet down the first edge, etc. Now the stitch count isn't important. What is important is evenness. So just work away at finding every single row edge. It's the motif. Single crochet into that space twice, and I'll catch up with you down at the bottom point. I've single crocheted twice into the end, or right through the space of the end motif of each row all the way down. That brings me down to my bottom point. This is row 1 over here. So that's the first little motif we built. Here's my little tail that started the whole thing. And this is all we're going to do in the bottom. We're going to single crochet twice, chain 2, and single crochet twice more, all into that bottom motif. And I am going to work right over top of my little short tail, because why not? Then you're going to just sort of take that chain 2, yank on it a little bit. That's going to be your very bottom. So you've got this nice little chain 2 space right here. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit and explain something that you might find kind of fun, depending on your aesthetic. But let's continue. Now I'm looking for the edge motif going up the other side. So same thing, 2 single crochet built into the end motif of each row. I'm working over top of that little short tail. You don't have to. You can weave your little short tails in later if you like. I just like to do as much as I can at the time of crochet. And now you've got this nice, simple, flat edge running down the side of your kerchief. You've got a little tiny point space down here, worked around that first motif, and now we're working up the other side. So 2 single crochet into the motif at the end of each row all the way back up. You'll have the same number of stitches running up the other side as you did the first side, but like I said, stitch count doesn't matter too much. What you're looking for here is evenness of edging. I'm just working over this little short tail. I'm going to make it as neat and tidy as I possibly can. I'll catch back up with you at the top. Once you've worked 2 single crochet into each row end motif all the way back up, you should have the same number of stitches, more or less, running up and down both sides. You are going to repeat the tie now. You're at the top, back up at the top. You're going to do exactly what you did over here. So if you are making it for a child, chain 41. If you're making it for an adult, chain 51 or a custom number. Slip stitch into the second chain from the hook and in each chain all the way back, remembering to finish with a slip stitch into the motif that you left from. Once you've worked that tie all the way back to the beginning, remember the last thing you do is slip stitch into the same motif that you left from. So there's your tie. You can tug on it later and smooth it out. You'll have the odd funny little loop, perhaps, maybe not, but don't worry about it. They will be hidden. Now we're going to just finish off across the top of our kerchief. Now remember, this is a very stretchy, it's a very kind of ripply sort of fabric. So what we want to do is just create a little bit more of a frame for it. But we're going to do just a slightly elongated version of what we did across the 2 sides. We are going to chain 1 to start, and into the same motif space we're going to half double crochet twice. So half double crochet twice. Try not to be too tight with your half double crochets. Find the next motif, 2 half double crochets right into it. You're working into the space of the motif. Find the next one, 2 half double crochet, and that's what you're going to do all the way across. 2 half double crochet into each motif all the way along. This will help to kind of pull up on that little pebbly motif that we were building. So it'll kind of create a little bit of a point to the last little chain 3s that run across the top. And it'll create like a little miniature shell stitch. It's very cute, it's very small, but it provides some kind of framework, a little bit of a stiffer edging, just so the top of your, or the top sort of edge of your kerchief doesn't want to stretch out on you. So 2 half double crochet into each motif space all the way across. We're almost done. Once you've worked 2 half double crochet into each of those motifs running across the top of your last row, work the last 2, and then you can slip stitch either into the same space or grab a piece of the tie next to you, whatever you feel is easiest or most comfortable or makes it look like it's finished off, if that makes any sense. So let me just work that last half double crochet again, and then how about I slip stitch into one of the loops at the bottom of my tie. I just feel like sometimes that sort of finishes off an edge. So like I say, you can slip stitch into the space, grab a piece of a stitch somewhere nearby, doesn't matter. Fasten off. And then you're going to grab your yarn needle and you're going to weave in your tails. Now I was working over top of my little one down here, and there's just a little bit of this yarn left over, so I'm just going to make sure I tug on it to make sure that it's hidden well underneath those stitches. And then I'm going to double back over top of one of those stitch loops and just bring in the rest of it. And I'm going to do the same thing up top with my long tail. I'm just going to weave it in underneath those stitches. Alright, I got one more little idea for you here. So let's get these little tails woven in and we'll get to that. Okay, remember I said that little chain 2 space, I was going to come back to it. If you want, this is kind of a neat place to hang a little pendant, a little piece of jewelry. Nothing heavy, but it's just a little extra decoration, and that little bit of extra weight will help pull that pretty little mesh stitch into position. It'll also give the point of your kerchief a little bit of definition. This is a great place to hang one of those single earrings that you might have left over. Let's say you've got you had a cute pair of clip-ons or a cute pair of earrings, little hanging earrings if you've lost one. This is the place where you can use that other little earring. Or if you've got an old pendant from a necklace that broke or something, this is a pretty little place to hang it. You can, if you're thinking ahead, actually crochet right through a jump ring if you've got it, or you can just use a pair of pliers, pull your jump ring apart with your pliers and slip it through this little chain 2 space down here. And if you don't have the pliers and you don't want to fight with metal, then you can also just sew it on with a little bit of, or tie it on with the same yarn. You can attach it any way you want, but what you want to do is get it right into that chain 2 space right there. And there we go. You can add it to the bottom, very bottom point of your kerchief. Make sure you get it around those chains, around the chain 2, so that it's right through that little chain 2 space. That just gives it as much strength as possible for it to dangle. Make sure it doesn't weigh too much. This is very light, about the weight of an earring. And if you want to make it removable, you can always remove and make it, put it on a little clip that sort of just clips on like a clip-on earring. That's why I say one of those clip-on earrings is a great choice for the little trinket at the bottom point of your kerchief. And that will give you just a little bit of extra weight to pull down that little point when you're wearing it. Plus, it'll be a really neat little place to put a piece of jewelry. I love the trinket. I love the use of a little piece of jewelry. I like that it's kind of a neat way to use up an earring, like a half a set, the one, you know, the one you didn't lose. And it's just enough weight to kind of pull that point down. Because this is a meshy stitch, and it's got a lot of stretch and a lot of give, and it's, you know, kind of bouncy. That little added bit of weight just helps to define that point in the kerchief, and it keeps it close to the back of your head, and it's a neat place to put a little bit of jewelry. I love it. It's a really nifty little thing, and I think it works really well with this particular yarn, this bamboo cotton mix. It's a very soft yarn. That isn't to say that it wouldn't work on something a little more fluffy, like this ripple cake yarn that I was using. I really like this too, because it will also help kind of pull down that little point. I might even need something a little bit heavier than this one here that I used, but you know your own work. So if you finish your scarf and you feel that it's really light and airy and soft, and you want to add a trinket, don't make it too heavy. Like I said, like the weight of a little earring, about the size of this. This is no bigger than like a 2 centimeter circumference. It's not that big. In fact, I think this is like, you know, those little wine glass charms that you could get at the craft stores a while ago, like a little flat of wine glass charms. This might even be one of those. I can't remember. I had it in the stash. But little things like that. Think outside the box, you know. There's all sorts of cute little bits of jewelry that you might have either in your scrap box, at the bottom of your jewelry box, especially if you're an older gal and you've been collecting it for a while. It could be a bead that you like, a really pretty button, anything that might just pull that point down a little bit and look pretty against the back of your hair. It's a neat place to hide almost a piece of jewelry. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed making this tutorial along with us today. We will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.